People achieving all the successes that the society has to offer and being miserable. Human beings have certain needs. You deprive people of those needs, they're going to suffer. This society simply fails to provide for those needs of children, so it's toxic. A lot of people with ADHD or bipolar disorder or depression or addictions, very talented, creative, wonderful people. But that's not because of their condition. It's because of what underlies their condition. And what underlies their condition is the only thing that's genetic, which is sensitivity. The average psychiatrist these days has no training in trauma. When somebody gets stabilized in psychedelic medications, that's when the work should begin. But the problem is that's when it ends. There's good news in all this. Healing is available. It's just inside all of us. The biggest work is the work that we do on ourselves. Well, there's your true self.
Hello, my name is Sarah. I'm really curious about your approach with modern day psychotherapy. I'm a therapist and I'm really interested in decolonizing the idea of how healing has been perceived by the field for a long time, which is not a holistic approach, basically. And so from a recovery or healing-oriented point of view, we're decolonizing the space in a lot of ways. Psychedelics are being introduced, and we're seeing a lot of various ways that it's being practiced, right? So I'm curious about your approach with regards to what traditional psychotherapy deems as malpractice or re-traumatizing or so on and so forth. What can you tell people who are space holders in this space and are conscious of not reintroducing trauma in a lot of ways, but can introduce more healing?
There's this modality that was based on my work. It's called compassionate inquiry. And it's an online course for psychotherapists and doctors and whoever wants to take it. We've had 3,000 students in the last 3 years in 80 countries. It's an online course. It starts 3 times a year. It's not for the faint-hearted. It's highly demanding. You're going to work like heck on yourself. And it's challenging, but it's also transformative. And we're not afraid of pain. We're not afraid of trauma. I never worry about re-traumatizing somebody. I think the people who are afraid of it are people who haven't dealt with their own trauma. Now, is it the case that in the course of therapy, people will experience pain? Probably. Because all their lives they've been running away from the pain. I distinguish a number of levels of compassion, and one level of compassion is the compassion of truth, where my interest is not whether somebody feels pain or not, but whether they are ready to face the truth or not. The truth is painful sometimes. It's painful to somebody to all of a sudden feel the emptiness inside them where they should have been loved. It's painful for them to experience that their parents didn't accept them for who they were. So pain's going to come up in therapy. But I'm not afraid of that. That's not re-traumatizing. The trauma is already there. They've been running away from it all their lives. That's why they're in your office. Now, if I were to use that person for my own purposes, for my ego enhancement, or worse, then I can re-traumatize them. But to conscientious therapy, conscious and conscientious therapy, you're never going to re-traumatize somebody. Some pain may come up that they weren't aware of, but that's not re-traumatizing. I'm not re-wounding them. I'm helping them recognize the wound that they've been carrying all their lives.
I guess I'm more curious about psychedelic use within the space of therapy.
Psychedelic?
Like psychedelic assisted therapy,
well,
and how there's a lot
with
of
psychedelics, I talked with a woman just this Monday who went to Peru and did an ayahuasca experience, and she's a mother of 3, single mom. She's got a business, and she came back just discombobulated. The holding environment, no, she's going to be okay. But she thought she was going crazy. She's not going crazy. What's actually happening? She asked the plant to help her understand her relationship with her mother. And the plant took her there. The plant took her to a state of infantile despair, where she had no words for it even, because there was no words yet. Just dark terror, because her mother didn't know how to hold her. And she experienced what's called primitive agony. It's the agony of the infant that's not held. So yes, that came up in the psychedelic experience. The problem was that the people she was working with didn't have the capacity to hold her in that space. So the problem wasn't the psychedelic. The problem was the context. And that just reinforces the essentiality of context for psychedelic work. There's got to be a good, strong holding environment. And the people that were working with her were good people, but they just couldn't hold her terror and her pain. So she was left alone with it. So again, I'm not afraid of that, as long as I know that the context is a safe space where somebody can help somebody understand their experience. Okay?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Reef Kareem.
Hi, Reef.
I was with Gabor when he got fired on the Peru retreat. That was a very intense experience. My question is on the role of neuroticism and neurosis in society, specifically in a toxic culture. And if you look at, obviously, we're all talking about mental health, and people tend to look, especially because I come from the field, they tend to look at the black and white trends and statistics of, oh, well, this is going up and this is going down, or this is getting better, or this is getting worse. But I feel like under the surface, in the role of just all of us in our human experience, is this concept of not diagnosable, but somewhere slightly above that, but in pain or suffering. And historically, it's been called neurosis or neuroticism, or, not quite meeting criteria for the threshold. In this toxic culture, how do you feel about the role of neuroticism growing such that people are more prone to having a lower threshold to traumatic experiences and to taking on more challenges in their life and more suffering, but not meeting conditions would be alerted?
Well, partly what I perceive you talking about is what I call the myth of normality, the myth of normal. Like, we make this distinction between the diagnosable ones and the ones who are not diagnosable. But diagnoses are only like the tip of the iceberg. When somebody's got enough constellation of traits and behaviors and dynamics that we can fit them into some kind of category, then we diagnose them. If they're not, then we don't. But I've never worked with anybody with a mental illness, so-called, whether it's addictions or borderline personality disorders. So I think it would be really healthy not to throw out the diagnoses, because they can be useful, but here's a distinction. The diagnoses don't explain anything. They explain nothing. They describe something. It's useful to describe things as long as we don't confuse a description with an explanation. If I said that this entity here is green with certain shaped leaves and so on, I would describe it, but I haven't talked to its essence at all. I haven't explained it at all. How do we know that he's got ADHD? Because he tunes out and tends to be restless. Why does he tune out and tends to be? Because he's got ADHD. Reef has got depression. How do we know that Reef has depression? Because his mood is low and he's not sleeping well and he's asocial. Why is his mood low, he's not sleeping well and he's asocial? Because he's got depression. How do we know this is depression? They don't explain a thing. So they describe things. And the explanations have to do with that person's life in a certain culture. And these so-called abnormalities are actually normal responses to an abnormal situation. So the borderline neurosis is a normal response of a human being who, when they were young, they couldn't trust anybody. So they tend not to trust. They tend to withdraw very quickly. They tend to react. They tend to idealize. These are normal responses to what happened to them. So I don't know if I'm answering the question. What I'm saying is, if we got rid of this idea of pathology and recognize, first of all, just how ubiquitous is all this, how we all share it, and why wouldn't we, living in this culture? Number one. And number two, that the diagnoses are helpful descriptions, but they're not explanations. And that we're all on the, we talk about somebody on the spectrum, but who the hell isn't on the spectrum? Life is a spectrum. We're all on a spectrum of something or other, So I'm not so keen on using the word neurosis. That's the word that they used in the late 19th century, early 20th. I see just people as responding to life. I don't know if that answers the question, but that's what comes up for me.
So good. Everything is just a wealth of wisdom. My cup is full. I'm so grateful for our time together, and for I'm just so grateful that you were able to come down and to continue this friendship. And thank you for everybody that's come out today within community. Is there any message that you want to leave everybody here who are creators in some way? They're using their creativity through music, through podcasts, through film, through media. Is there any words that you want to leave with empowering how we can infuse these messages in the discussion that we've had today in our form of expression?
No, I think people... my guess is there's enough creativity and spontaneity and independent thought in this room that people will... But just I'll leave you with a story, which is from one of the chapters, and it's about Robin Williams, actually. There's this, was it Good Will Hunting, with Matt Damon, and actually Williams plays the role of a therapist, and Damon is this very troubled, aggressive character, but inside him he's just yearning to be loved, and at some point, Robin Williams' character I think, looks at him and holds him and says, "It's not your fault." And the Damon character just collapses into tears, So if there's one message, it's not your fault, okay? People got to get that. Stop the blaming of others and in ourselves, and it's not anybody's fault. It's just how it is when society is functioning in a certain way. That's all.
Thank you, Kat.
Thanks.